A big, fat zero. By the middle of the century. It's not as fast as the Extinction Rebellion protesters wanted. They say the UK should decarbonise our economy as soon as 2025. But it's still pretty ambitious.
I do think if the UK accepts this recommendation, it would place it top of the pile. This would be the first of the big economies, the developed countries, and a really bold statement.
But how much would achieving this cost? Today's report estimates 1 to 2% of GDP by 2050. That's the cost of the additional taxes and subsidies for the development of zero carbon electricity production and retrofitting the heating systems of homes. That's 20 to 40 billion pounds a year in today's money. More than double what we're currently spending. But is this the right way to think about decarbonisation? Actually, no, say the experts. Lord Stern, the doyen of climate economists, says that these costs are probably overstated, since the costs of zero carbon technologies, things like solar panels and wind turbines, are falling so rapidly.
I think that it's going to be less than that. When we did the Stern Review a dozen years ago, that was 1 year before the iPhone. Think about how we can manage systems and cities and transport now. If you look back a dozen years when we did the Stern Review, who would have thought that the cost of solar with storage would be now undercutting conventional fossil fuels for electricity in many, many parts of the world? Who would have thought a dozen years ago that the heads of all the major car companies would be talking about the end of the era of the internal combustion engine? Now, we've done all that in a dozen years with pretty ordinary, not very strong policy. Imagine what we could do if the policy was strong.
And one also has to consider the domestic economic benefits against these costs. UK companies like this one, which is developing zero carbon liquid air and liquid nitrogen engines for use in refrigerated trucks, can help us meet that magic zero. But in the process, they will also create new jobs, new exports, and fresh sources of prosperity. Tony Martyn is the Chief Technology Officer at Dearman, whose research and development centre is based near Croydon in London.
This is part of the solution. It's a fantastic opportunity for British innovation and manufacturers. So we want to be a part of it. We're about ready to go. With the small amount of help, there's a vast array of companies that can really tackle the carbon and greenhouse gas problems. It's all here in the United Kingdom.
Climate change is an ecological threat on a planetary scale. But should we be thinking about it as a golden economic opportunity?
The drive to the zero carbon economy by 2050 is also the creation of a new form of growth, a growth that's sustainable, a growth that's capable of reducing poverty, a growth that's inclusive in the sense that more people get decent job opportunities. This is a tremendously attractive proposition, and we shouldn't see it as, oh dear, we've got these heavy costs to bear as a result. We've got to invest, and we should see these as investments and innovations, because that's exactly what they are in a much better life.
I think it's totally wrong that we stop growing to achieve the targets. The targets will produce growth, absolutely. We will grow tremendously.
Prosperity versus the planet, growth versus green, old versus young. These are the ways we've been trained to think about global warming. Perhaps we need a year zero, not just for emissions, but for our entire way of thinking about climate change.